Good afternoon. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler's coverage of PH Vote, the 2016 elections. We'd like to acknowledge our partners, Globe, 7-Eleven, 7-Election, OLX, Radius, Starbucks, Coca-Cola FEMSA, and McDonald's. Special mention to our advocacy partners working very hard right now over at PPCRV and NAMFREL. If you take a look right now as we go on, there's actually a Comelec live shot that is going on. They're declaring a failure of elections in some of the precincts in the Philippines. Can we listen in? Is that possible? Okay, we're not getting any sound right now. We'll bring you the latest details as soon as we get it. In the meantime, oh, I did try the audio. Why don't I go ahead and update you on the other things that have gone on since we last saw each other. It is day 2 after the Monday elections when we had an overwhelming turnout. 81%, the largest turnout, voter turnout in the Philippines in as long as I can remember, and I've been watching it for 30 years. So here we go. What's up right now? Well, we see if you go to Rappler's live blog page, you can see it. We're live here. There's a slight delay from real time, but you will see all the latest updates as we come on, and you can actually see some of the unofficial results as well as the stories you may have missed while we were sleeping. Let's take a look at the results, which is what everyone is looking for. And just to refresh your memory, here we go. This is the race for the president. It seems all but a foregone conclusion with 95.3% of the precincts reporting as of, let me see, I think we can refresh this so I can give you something that is, there we go. As of 3:58 this afternoon, Rudy Duterte is up at 35%. Seems all but a foregone conclusion. He is the presumptive president. He's gotten 15.8 million votes compared to the second, Tamar Rojas, who's gotten 23.5%. You can see here, if you want to see where they got their votes, you can look at the map that we have for you on Rappler. Let's go deeper into the vice presidential race, which is actually where all eyes are focused right now. Take a look. It is a tight race. Soon after the polls closed that evening, Bongbong Marcos took the lead in this, and around 3 a.m. Tuesday morning, Leni Robredo came up and overtook him. But always there's been a very, very slim margin, incredibly tight. As of 3:58 this afternoon, with 95.55% of the precincts reporting, you've got 35.1% of the ballots cast. 13,960,824 for Leni Robredo, the Liberal Party candidate. And we have for Senator Bongbong Marcos, 13,727,796 votes. That gives him 34.6% of the votes. Look at that. 34.6% for Marcos, 35.1% for Leni Robredo. You can also see here the transmission status. It shows you that we're nearly done, but the counting is going to take just a little bit longer. We're going to come back to that and bring you more details as well as the developments over the last few hours with Bongbong Marcos, Miriam Santiago, and Comelec responding to some of these charges. Let's quickly take a look at the senators. Here's the race for the Senate. You see Franklin Drilon, so Joel Villanueva of TESDA had actually been at number 1 right off the gate, and he was there up until yesterday morning. Frank Drilon came in, so you have your first 12 right here. Frank Drilon, Joel Villanueva, Vic Soto, Ping Lacson, Dick Gordon, Mig Zubiri, Manny Pacquiao, Risa Ontiveros, who we spoke with yesterday, Kiko Pangilinan, Win Gatchalian, Ralph Recto, and Laila De Lima. Just below them, so we can see the gap between Laila and Francis Tolentino, who is number 13. So you have your first 12. Number 13, there's a gap between them. Laila De Lima, 13,739,958. Francis Tolentino, 12,469,751. Finally, the party list. And this is an interesting one because you have which are the ones who will get into Congress? Well, it'll be the party list with at least 2% of the ballots cast. So you can see here the top 12. Very interesting to see the list. And you can read more about this at, this is actually our next thing. The partial results. Ako Bicol, here we go. So you can actually see the party list. Ako Bicol leads the party list race. 2 new groups in the top 10. That includes One Pac-Man and Kabayan with businessman Mikey Romero and lawyer Harry Roque as first nominees. Let's just quickly look at the partial results of the overseas race. That's really important. Right now, it's Duterte and Marcos leading it. They've maintained the lead from the beginning. And just for you, our Rappler Tech team's hard at work along with our editorial team. You can see that we actually created a separate page for the overseas absentee voting results. It is the largest in recent history, actually the largest ever that I can remember. 1.8 million registered voters, and we'll get a sense of how many votes were cast. But you can see here, they cast overwhelmingly for Duterte at 72.5% of the vote. For Ferdinand Marcos, Bongbong Marcos, the junior, 42.2% of the votes for him. Alan Peter Cayetano came in second with 33.2%, and Leni Robredo at third with 19.4%. Please go ahead and take a look, and you can see the overseas absentee ballot there. We've got to take a look at something that has powered all of these, powered elections from the very beginning of the campaign, and that is social media. We've got a story on it. You can see it on your screen. How did the presidential and vice presidential candidates fare on social media? But aside from this, live right now, coming to us from Singapore, we're going to be speaking with Twitter's Rishi Jaitley. He is in charge of Asia Pacific and the Middle East and Africa. He's got half of the world, more chunks of the world than ever. And he's also a friend of mine. Rishi, please, are you there?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Maria?
I can hear you. I can hear you,
Great.
Rishi. Nice to see you again. Rishi Jaitley, you're in Singapore, right?
I'm in Singapore. It's great to be back with you again. Missing Manila. Hope to be back there soon, but I am in Singapore at the moment.
Well, we hope to see you here soon. Why don't you tell us what you're seeing? So Twitter has played a great role in the Philippine elections. What are the top lines that you've seen?
Well, at a top line, I think you're right, Maria. This is definitively the first Twitter election we've seen in the Philippines. I mean, we haven't seen anything at this scale in a long time. We look at a lot of elections, Maria, as you might imagine, in recent years. And at a top level, there are a few things I see. One, people power. I haven't seen an election where citizens and ordinary citizens and voters have used Twitter and social media to participate in a big way. And the tweet volumes, 35 million overall, 5 million the other day, all suggest that. Of course, we saw news organizations, including Rappler, use Twitter to break news and publish videos. And then finally, I think I would say democracy and openness and transparency, right? You've referenced the voter turnout. We've done a lot of work with Comelec, a lot of irregularities being reported on Twitter. So lots of distinctive things I'm picking up from the Philippines, particularly around people power, particularly around live and video, and particularly around this idea of a more open, transparent, inclusive election.
What can you tell us more about what the people power, and do you have any numbers to show us in terms of how large exactly, how engaged were Filipinos on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, well, you look at the country, I think there are about 50 million registered voters. We observe about 48 million are on social media. I
wow,
think if I had,
that's great.
And during the election from the beginning of the year, we've seen 35 million election-related tweets since the start of the year. That is an astonishing number. That is all public expression. And what's interesting, Maria, and I think you guys have a chart with the world map. One of the things we've seen is the world has been tweeting. It's not just the Philippines. And you just referenced, of course, the overseas vote. But we're seeing tweets from the United States, from Europe, from the Middle East, where I was yesterday, and the election was big news, and of course across Southeast Asia. We've also seen that tweets about Duterte, he has dominated mentions both in aggregate and also that on election day itself. At about 7:30 p.m. on election day, we saw tweets about the election spike. But what's really cool, Maria, for those of us who care about kind of the mission that the internet affords all of us, it's tweets from ordinary citizens that are some of the most retweeted. You know, young people who are tweeting pictures of themselves or interesting infographics, or bands that are tweeting, you know, or humor, right? When the debate was delayed, there was this hashtag Durium. I think one of the things we're seeing in the Philippines more than other countries is bottoms up sort of culture, conversation, personality is loud and clear. And I'm not surprised knowing the Philippines.
That's incredible. You know, Rishi, we actually have the map up, the global map where the Twitter conversations are going on. Could you give us an idea? So the majority of it was still coming from the Philippines.
That's right. The majority was still coming from the Philippines, but I think the places to take note, first and foremost, the Middle East. You know, there is, of course, a big expatriate population in the UAE and other countries. I myself spent a lot of time there with Twitter, and the conversation volumes have been striking. I think also the United States, of course, there's a big diaspora in the United States, and it's not surprising to see the conversation. You know, I think one of the things Twitter has done is helped the world take note of this recent spate of elections. You and I were just talking about this in Southeast Asia and Asia in general. And so this map, I think, is a powerful illustration of this was a global moment and still is a global moment as much as it is a national moment in the Philippines.
Fantastic. And you know what again was interesting about it was when you said that there are 35 million conversations. There are 54.4 million registered voters, but 81% of them came out to vote. And it looks like with the kind of engagement there was on Twitter as well, we were able to, I know that you had a hashtag PH vote with us, right? Where people, after they voted, used it. Do you have an idea how many times or how many people used it?
Well, you know, what we do know is, excuse me, what we do know is that, you know, 10% of conversation, 10% of the overall conversation happened on election day itself. 4 million tweets in one day. Again, we may be used to kind of these big numbers, particularly given how the Philippines has embraced social media. But when you take a step back and look at other countries, those are extraordinary numbers. I mean, during the presidential and vice presidential debates alone, we saw 5 million tweets combined. You know, Rappler, you all have actually have innovated in extraordinary ways on the platform, not only with the hundreds of live videos we've seen from Rappler, the emojis, of course, which you guys supported. You know, in many ways, this election represents, I think, the collective personality and purpose of the Philippines, and the data with mentions of candidates also illustrates that as well.
What role do you see Twitter playing now as the votes are being counted?
You know, it's not explicitly our business and role. A lot of people ask us, well, you know, can Twitter be predictive? Does Twitter data matter in elections context? I do think that in a country like the Philippines, we are an interesting sample size. You know, we did see that, you know, Duterte has been leading the conversation with 40% of all mentions, presidential candidate mentions, have been of him, almost as much as the next two candidates. And I think looking ahead, you know, we're obviously, as we move from Twitter for elections to Twitter in a governance context, there are all kinds of ways Twitter can be used, whether it's in the context of, he's spoken a lot about law and order. We see a lot of police organizations around the world using Twitter in really creative ways to engage citizens, whether it's our continuing work with the Election Commission, whether it's disaster relief and more. There are all kinds of ways in which to build on this momentum in the Philippines and ensure Twitter is used in a governance context in a powerful way as well. We look forward to that opportunity in the coming months.
Well, what's interesting is you mentioned earlier that you're seeing a bottom-up approach, and that kind of bottom-up approach, strangely enough, I do think that social media played a role in getting a Duterte president, you know, because we first saw his rise and his support on social media. So what kind of impact do you see this having on democracies, not just in the Philippines, but around the world?
I think, you know, a couple of things. One, it's giving, you know, the unique attribute of Twitter, of course, is that we're public, and tweets travel. Tweets travel far and wide. And what that does is that it gives both candidates and participants alike unique power to use Twitter to shape the public conversation. And I'm sure you can think of examples during this election cycle where a conversation born on Twitter, became mainstream. In fact, in our work with the Comelec, they were encouraging people to tweet about voting irregularities. And we saw a lot of tweets, Maria, with the hashtag #SumbongKo, and they were talking about hashtag defective or hashtag replaced or hashtag VCM. So I think there are ways in which the unique properties of Twitter can help move conversation from the fringe to the mainstream. And I think that fundamentally in an elections context is what's possible. And I think in the Philippines, obviously you have news organizations and parties and candidates using Twitter. In the Philippines, I haven't seen, hashtags and tweets from ordinary people see such visibility in an election cycle the way I did this last cycle in the Philippines. And but I'm not surprised, again, given the way the country's embraced social media.
Well, in some ways, you said moving from the fringe to the mainstream. That's exactly what happened to Mindanao with the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. Let me ask you about some of the negative effects. What have you noticed is completely new, has created new problems because of this kind of bottom-up groundswell?
Well, like with any new technology, where education is imperative at the front end. We've seen folks, of course, people are passionate, people are opinionated. We see this in all elections, and it leads to a conversation sometimes that some people might find objectionable. But by and large, I think what I saw, at least, and what we saw looking at the data, looking at the conversations that were particularly viral, there was positivity, there was humor, there was personality, there was pop culture. Only in the Philippines have I seen popular local celebrities like Vice Ganda or the local band Parokya, I think, Parokya ni Edgar. Yeah, engaging in this election in an interesting way. I referenced the Durium hashtag. So I think in general, the collective personality of the Philippines shined on Twitter. Of course, there are opportunities for where people get passionate, et cetera. But I think in general, we saw a conversation that was really positive, engaging. And we saw, the Philippines is one of our fastest growing markets. And we saw new users come to Twitter in big ways and big droves during this election. And I suspect that'll continue.
What can we expect in the coming days from Twitter?
I think what we can expect is, as you know, in the last year, we've really taken note. We've taken note in the Philippines. I think I said when I came there last that, we've noticed that the Philippines love Twitter and we love the Philippines back. And last year, we've gone deeper in our work with news organizations, including Rappler. We've gone deep in the entertainment space, of course, with a variety of properties and more. And I think what we're going to do is the company will continue to lean in and continue to focus on, one, how can Twitter be your front row seat in a news and political context where you're experiencing governance and the conversation now in a multi-dimensional way. But you'll see us continue to think about things like sports. You'll see us continue to think about things like entertainment, and how do we continue to onboard and ensure everyone is winning on Twitter, and that the Philippines and its unique personality is shining on the platform. So stay tuned.
Fantastic, great. Rishi, we're going to be speaking with you again. I think this, the canvas, when they actually open up the results and then try to match it with what the machines did, that begins on May 23. And then we're going to have a new president sworn in June 30th. So I'm sure we'll be speaking again. Thank you so much. Rishi Jaitley, he's coming to us live from Singapore. He runs the Middle East and Africa, as well as Asia Pacific. Isn't that the whole world, Rishi?
I like to think so sometimes, but it is certainly the most interesting part of the world, where I think you see a lot of innovation, a lot of energy, a lot of optimism and hope around the technologies you and I care about. So it's fun, and looking forward to being back in the Philippines.
See you soon. Thanks so much,
Thank
Rishi.
You. All righty.
So
bye-bye.
That's Rishi Jaitley talking to us, and we've certainly seen a bottom-up approach. We've seen this in the rise of Rudy Duterte. We first saw the spike of the presence on social media. Interestingly enough, it was actually the Davao bloggers who first started engaging on social media way before Rudy Duterte even acknowledged he was going to be running for president. And over the next few months, you may not know that Twitter actually ran 3 simultaneous popular surveys. The first was on Facebook, where Rudy Duterte won every single month. We ran it December, January, February, March, April, and you'll get those April results and the May results soon. So we ran it December. The second is on our site itself, which is one person, one vote. In that one, again, every single month, Rudy Duterte won, and what we saw reflected in the popular surveys became reality. I'll do the third survey, which was on text messaging. And this we did with our partner Globe, where we ran every month a survey that showed us if the elections happened today, who would you vote for? Again, overwhelmingly, Rudy Duterte won it every single month. I think what we wound up seeing, and we're going to show you that data later on and mine through it with our partners in Ateneo, in La Salle. We have other partners who are going through this data, but what you will see there, what we hope to see is exactly when did we hit that tipping point that actually created a Duterte presidency. We saw it move from this popular survey that's not so scientific. The SMS survey is a bit more, it's representational sampling, but it shifted over into statistical surveys as early as February. So this is an interesting look at it. Let's go back now. Let's go back to the vice president. So we showed you the race for the vice presidency here, the overseas absentee ballot. And you see here the race nationwide. Again, let me refresh just to make sure that we have the latest results. Our team at Pope Pius is working hard to get this for you. As of 3:58, that is still the latest results. We have Vice President, 35.1% for Leni Robredo, 34.6% for Bongbong Marcos. Last night, Rappler spoke with Bongbong Marcos, and he talked about why he thinks there's cheating happening right now. Let's roll that video.
On the line is Senator Bongbong Marcos. Senator.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, this is Natasha Gutierrez of Rappler. Senator Bongbong, we've been following your press conference earlier today. Could you explain to us what the thought was behind the proclamations you said earlier about possible cheating on the side of Representative Leni Robredo?
Well, because there are so many anomalous developments that are happening in the process of the quick count. Number one, we have noticed that many of the votes that come from the areas where I'm strong are being held back for whatever reason, and there are other votes that we cannot identify where they're coming from. So it's very hard to explain exactly how these numbers have been generated. We are still waiting for a more detailed. We have asked the chairman of the COMELEC, we have asked for more detailed information so we can analyze it more properly. And these are the things that we have to examine. Now, secondly, there was an incident, I think earlier today, where one of the candidates, one transmitter, one candidate's votes was reduced. Now, there is no such thing as a negative transmitter. Every transmitter adds onto the number that is of the votes that has been counted. But even worse is that on the next transmitter, the number that disappeared from one candidate's vote count suddenly appeared in another candidate's vote count, and that is pretty much impossible, and then it's completely unexplainable. There are all of these other days. We have reports of certain provinces where there's overvoting by at least 10-20%. There is ongoing a very clear attempt in ARM to once again manipulate the vote count and to change the result of the election from that which was actually voted by our people. So there are all of these many, and I don't think we have ever seen an instance where one candidate is leading by more or less 1 million votes, but at 8 in the evening, and by 3:30 that following morning, that lead has disappeared. Where it disappeared to, and where the other votes came in to replace it, it's impossible to say. So all of these things that really require an explanation, and that's why we are asking we are asking Chairman Andy Bautista to provide us with information so that we can explain all these strange developments.
Okay, Senator, did you have any problems with the count before that point that you saw the votes narrowing or that gap narrowing?
Yes, I did. Simply because you could see that it was a very measured increase in the vote, and it did not seem to follow what our internal surveys were saying. And furthermore, again, we had our surveys that we did before the election. We have the exit polls where I was declared the winner, and suddenly all of these things happened, and that's completely contrary to the trend that has been established in the last few hours, in the last few days.
So, Senator, just to be clear, even when you were leading the polls, you already had concerns and problems with possible discrepancies.
Yes, I already felt that. Even as we passed about 10% of the precinct count, that I felt that the numbers were starting to slow down already, and I discerned that there was a slowing down in the increase of votes. And if the internal surveys are anything to go by, it's very clear that it was not going to reach the same number as the surveys were saying. And I talk about not one survey, but maybe at least 3, 4, 5 surveys, of which we take the average. So very hard to explain. And we are asking the COMELEC, we are asking the chairman of the COMELEC to please provide us with detailed information so that we can analyze the data and we can see what exactly has happened.
Okay, Senator, some analysts have been saying that actually the reason why you were leading initially was because the initial precinct returns were from the solid north, Metro Manila, where you were obviously strong, and the catch-up was actually quite a regular pace. It just so happened that these came from Visayas and Mindanao, where Representative Lenny was strong.
Well, I would have to disagree with that, simply because the numbers that were coming in from the north were very low. The percentages of total votes that were transmitted was still very low, so it would not have that kind of effect. And secondly, I think it is Region 5 Bicol and maybe Region 6 that the Congresswoman claims strength, not in Eastern Visayas and not in Mindanao. So, and again, as I said, in Mindanao there was a very clear attempt to manipulate the vote, and shall we say, the barricades and the conflict between two groups is still ongoing in Cotabato City even as we speak.
So, Senator, these internal surveys that you speak of, you're telling us that your lead there was a lot more convincing and a lot more significant than the current results.
Yes, it was, and again, that's why I immediately, very early on, was beginning to detect that the numbers were being somehow massaged so that they would follow what I have come to call Plan B.
Senator, would you be willing to show these internal surveys?
No, the internal surveys, we've shown them already. So yeah, we'll be willing to show them again if that's what you want. But I think more importantly is once we get the information, once we get the analysis on the detailed information that we are requesting from the COMELEC, then we will be able to explain whether to the good or to the bad about what has happened in the last 24 hours.
So, Senator, if Representative Lenny continues to lead tomorrow, we will not expect a concession from you until we get these returns from COMELEC or their explanation?
No, not at all. I am not conceding. As I said, the exit polls put me ahead. So that's very clear in my mind. Our internal surveys, the exit polls, all of these things say that I'm ahead. So it's very, very hard to believe what we are seeing right now. So no, I will not concede.
Okay, Senator, also the CNN graphics, I guess, that have been spread in social media, these, we understand that the networks had actually apologized for the discrepancy in Senator Cheese's tally. So they say it was a typo or an error. So they're actually taking it back.
Well, it first happened in one station, and they said it was their mistake. And then the exact same thing happened in another station. So how likely is it that two stations made the exact same mistake to the exact same number, transferring the exact number of votes from one candidate to another candidate, the same candidates, by the way, all a mistake. That's highly unlikely.
So, Senator, what is the possibility of asking for a recount? What would you like to see, I guess, moving ahead, or how would you like COMELEC to respond to your concerns?
Well, I would, first of all, we have asked the COMELEC to stop the quick count because we have reached the highest percentage of precincts reported that we have ever done in any quick count. And the reason that the quick counts were stopped, but at around 80-81% in previous elections, was simply because they did not want any discrepancy between the 100% quick count and the official count to cause problems. Because if it's a 100% quick count and that a result comes out, and there is the official count, and they're not the same, then people will doubt the official count, and that's not what we want. So we are still hoping that they will listen to this request that we have made, that we stop the quick count. It has outlived its usefulness.
Okay, Senator, I have two last questions for you. One is, do you then see this an extended canvassing in the next few days? Or are we waiting for, these are obviously unofficial accounts, accurate in the past, but what do you then see? Do you then see an extended canvassing of these votes?
Well, I don't know if it will be an extended one, but it will certainly be a very detailed one and a very rigorous one. And that is something that we will be watching and looking at and monitoring very, very closely.
Senator, was it you that conducted the exit polls that you're referring to?
I'm sorry?
The exit polls that you were earlier referring to, who commissioned these? Was it you or was it an independent body?
No, it was an independent. It was something that was published. It did not come from us.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. Now, Senator,
okay.
If you do win, how are you preparing for a possible tandem with the presumptive president, Duterte?
Well, I think I think that there's very little preparation required, as we know each other very well. And I think that as soon as I'm proclaimed, we will be able to find a modus vivendi, a way of working together that will be satisfactory to both of us.
And Senator, just lastly, what would you respond to Representative Lenny, who said that when you were leading, there were no accusations from their end about cheating, but the moment that she overtook you, there were suddenly this, what she calls unfair accusations?
Quite the contrary. We started talking about that around 8, 9 in the evening when I was still ahead, and I could see already that there was a pattern developing which could not be explained by any of the information that we had.
Okay, Senator, thank you so much. We'll look at exit polls, internal surveys, as well as if whether CNN copied from GMA, which would have explained the discrepancies in Senator Chis Escudero's polls. But thank you for speaking to us at Rappler.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Marcos on the phone.
Hi, it's good. So you were just listening to Bongbong Marcos's interview last night with Rappler's Natasha Gutierrez. Soon after this morning, take a look on Rappler. You can see that Miriam Santiago backs Marcos's cheating allegation. Let's put that up. You can see us now. And that just came in. Patty filed that piece at 1 o'clock this afternoon. She's citing her running mate's numbers in the unofficial vote count. Santiago compares this current administration to an authoritarian government, which, in her words, feels free to manufacture numbers as they're needed. Soon after that, again, let's look at what happened now. If you can see behind me, you can go back. You can come back to me. So what you're seeing now is actually here behind us. Bongbong Marcos just held a press conference, and Patty Pachon, who wrote that story, showed that it said that a new script or computer command was introduced in the transparency server. It was at this time that the margin between Marcos and Robredo decreased. The information source of Marcos was an accredited observer in PPCRV, the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting. The command supposedly, allegedly altered the hash codes. This is what the Marcos camp says. They're still gathering more information about this. They said that they transmitted a letter to COMELEC today about this new script command. Cheche Lazaro is joining us now, and she'll be taking over the anchoring. Cheche, is this a surprise to you?
Well, I read that article, and it looks as though these allegations of cheating, while it started after the Robredo started to overtake Bongbong Marcos, although in his press conference, in his conversation with Natasha, he's denying that and saying that he did call their attention much earlier. I am surprised that Miriam has joined in in this allegation of cheating. I really don't know what their basis is, but has COMELEC responded to this particular charge?
COMELEC has responded. The COMELEC Commissioner, Guanzon, responded to it. We'll run that. We actually have a 16-minute soundbite. But perhaps right now, let's take a quick break from Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo from this very hotly contested fight. And let's go back to Rudy Duterte, the man who has
the man of the hour
won overwhelmingly, right? We can
Yes,
see, you
yes.
can actually see here, the latest counts, he is 39% of the vote,
That
far
is
more.
quite substantial than what was projected, right? And one of those people who knows Rudy Duterte well and has been a very strong supporter, staunch supporter of the mayor is Irene Santiago, who is from Mindanao. She's the CEO of the Mindanao Commission on Women. And I think we have Mrs. Santiago on the phone. Irene, are you there?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Irene. Nice to
Hi.
nice to see you again. And I have to say that the candidate that you support has overwhelmingly handily won the elections. He is now our presumptive president. Most people who have seen him on the campaign trail say they don't really know who he is. As somebody who has worked with him very closely, can you give us a brief profile on who Rudy Duterte really is?
Thank you for this chance to talk about him in a way that is more human, because that's what he is to me. You know, his parents and my parents were big friends because they were both politicians, and Davao was small then. So in a sense, we grew up together, and I know him as a really kind, soft-hearted gentleman. You know, he had his problems when he was in high school, but you know, this is a man who respects people and has a very soft heart for the people who are in the margins of society, as Leni Robredo would say, ang mga tao na sa laylayan. Huh?
That seems like that seems to run counter to the first impression that he gave the public when he would appear. He was a tough-talking. His language was peppered with all kinds of curse words. He was very strong in his language. He did not mince words. This seems to run counter to the description of a gentle, caring person.
And this is the complicated. This is the complicated Rudy Duterte. He has this public persona that is, you know, strong and decisive, and as you said, using all those cuss words and all that. But I have watched him for the past 22 years that he's been a public official. And he has this weekly television show where he does, you know, all this, if you steal this, if you do that, you know, he does all that threatening. And then I'm wondering, I said, that's not him. Why does he do it? And then I realized he has really psyched the people. And this is the way people want to be disciplined.
Is it fair to say that all of his strongman language and his cursing are a put on?
It's not a put on. It's something he knows. This is the way people talk, and this is the way people can understand him, and so it is not put on because he is a man of the masses. So he knows that that's the way they talk. This is the way he can get them to respond to him. And because I've always wondered, why does he do this? This is not the person I know. You
Yes,
know?
yes.
And then so just to give you an example, Davao was going to have new trash cans. So in his television show, he says, pagka may nakaw ng isang trash can, bantay kayo sa akin. You know, that kind of language. And of course, up to now,
Yes.
we have yet to lose one trash can, you know.
Okay, how does he strike fear in people? Is it because of his reputation? Is it because of the language he uses? Or is this pure charisma on the part of a leader?
I don't know. I think all of the above. He will tell you, this is what I'm going to do. He's going to do it. You know, I'm going to make you eat your cigarette, and he will do it. Put it in your mouth. And I remember.
Does he really do it?
I haven't seen it, but I think that's just a threat.
Yes.
Is enough. I mean, I remember I was really appalled when the smoking ban had just begun, and he told the former mayor of Davao City, Luis Santos, says, "I am going to make you eat that cigarette." And I go, "What? This is the former mayor he's talking to."
Yes.
But you know, he's the kind of person who will tell that directly. So that's why during the campaign, when he was doing that to the other presidential candidates, I said, don't go there, because he knows how to do that. Other people don't know how to answer him when he starts, getting very direct and uses the language of the streets.
Okay, Irene, I have a specific question for you, because you're a very staunch advocate of women's rights. In fact, you spearheaded the United Nations International Conference on Women in Beijing. And as president of that particular UN activity, you are for the rights of women, and you know that women have been largely marginalized all over the world. What was your take when Mayor Duterte made that comment about that Australian lady and the rape joke? Was it a joke, or was he serious about his statement?
The way he explained it is that I was narrating what I said, 20 years ago or something like that. So that's the way it wasn't a joke. He was narrating. He said what he said many years ago. Now, for feminists like me, who have fought for women's rights all of these years, one of the things I understand is that sexism in our culture remains. It is so alive and well. And those are the things we need to call out. That those kinds of remarks, the kinds of remarks that belittle women should always be called out. And so a feminist like me say, so the question is, how can I, a feminist and a strong one, support a man like him? Because his public policies are very progressive. I mean, his behavior, his language may be like that. So you're saying, okay, this is not a perfect world. So in his imperfection, I'm going to work. He's a work in progress as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to work to make him less sexist.
Okay.
But his public policies are probably the best in the entire country.
Okay, so you're saying, in effect, that there is a disconnect.
It's not a disconnect. I mean, it's true of almost everybody. I mean, we are born into a very sexist culture. And then it goes on and it's maintained by our institutions. And so that's what we need to work on. Make sure that we align the public policies with the behavior, which is the culture, which is the cultural part. And so it took me a long time to say, oh my goodness, I know this is going to be the question, how can Irene Santiago support Rodrigo Duterte? But everything is done here. I can give you a long litany of things he has done in Davao City. and there would be the only public policies like that in the entire country. So,
Okay.
you know,
Speaking of public policies, we know very little of the kind of government that Mayor Duterte is going to establish. Could you give us, as you say, you have a long list of things that he has done, but along that list of things that he has done, what kind of public policy will he enunciate on several fronts of governance? Can you give us some insights?
Yeah, there are four. I would like to. There's a long list of things that have been recommended by the women here who formed the backbone of the Duterte campaign. But I think, you know, I just give you a very simple framework. So we will work on security, development, fair access to decision making, and acceptance of identity. Those are the four things that were grievances that turn to conflict in society. Those are the four fundamental human needs that eventually become grievances. So to us, security, development, which means health, education, livelihood, housing, fair access to decision making, and fourth, the acceptance of identity. Those are four fundamental human needs that will be met by a Rudy Duterte presidency.
Okay, can we focus on two items which are not quite clear to me? When you say fair access, what does this mean, and what specific programs will a Duterte presidency enunciate?
One of the things, the gender program in Davao City is one of the best, and they have been designated a learning hub. So there's going to be a lot of training for leadership positions in government and in other agencies. So leadership is going to be one. And certainly identifying women who can be in positions of significance, and not just positions in education and social welfare. Within I have to give you a joke.
Yes.
Because when he asked me, said, "You're coming to Malacanang with me," and I said, "Yeah, I'm going with you if you make me Secretary of Defense."
Okay, all right.
So this is the kind of thing, you know, that we're trying to tell him. You know, get away from the traditional positions for women, and make sure, you know, those are positions of significant decision-making positions. So,
What you're saying, Irene, is that he walks his talk. Can you tell me what the ratio of women to men is in important positions in Davao under his leadership?
Oh, in Davao, it's almost all women. His chief of staff was a woman. I mean, you know, our city council is more than half of our city council is women. So he's very comfortable having women in positions of leadership. So I think right now we're sort of, oh my goodness, I've been telling the men in the core group, I said, you're all men, come on. I want to see more women.
Okay.
And there are women, but they're not visible. So I said, more women and more visibility for the women who are in the team.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that insight into our presumptive president, Irene. And I hope to see you as Secretary of Defense. Thank you very much.
You heard it first in Rappler.
Yes, you heard it first on Rappler. And we hope that we can say that we heard it first and it's happening. Thank you, Irene Santiago from Davao City on Mayor Duterte. Let's now move on to an excerpt of the press conference at the PICC, which featured Commissioner Rowena Guanzon. Let's watch this.
Ma'am, what do you think of Senator Marcos's request to stop the unofficial tally of votes?
Under Republic Act 8436, the AES law as amended, the quick count is allowed even while the canvassing is going on. There's no prohibition. Perhaps if Senator Marcos can give us some evidence, substantial evidence of bad faith or fraud, then bank can consider that. But otherwise, it's in the law that it's allowed. You know that is provided for by the law so that we have a transparent election. The people have a right to public information. And it's always best to have transparent elections so that there is no doubt about the credibility of the election.
Okay, we just watched the presser of Commissioner Guanzon, where she says that that the Bongbong Marcos should present evidence. You have the latest numbers now. Are
Well,
we able
Before,
to update?
Yeah, let's update that, but let's take a look at the front page. What would be the front page of Rappler?
Yes.
But on our front page right now, you can see the latest story that just came in from Comelec, and this is kind of interesting. If we can pull this up? Comelec declares special elections for 17,600 voters. It declares a failure of elections in 52 polling precincts because of problems like misdelivered ballots, security concerns. Paterno has had that story. If you take a look at it, it's got some of the problems. No printed ballots, one precinct or 436 voters affected in Cordova, Barangay Gabi, Cebu. Misdelivered official ballots, they lack official ballots, security concerns, that's in 47 precincts, which affected 15,074 voters, and you can see exactly where. In all of these, Comelec said it affected 17,657 voters. If you're on Rappler, you can then watch Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez making that announcement. Mm-hmm. We'll try to give you more of the charges that the camp of Bongbong Marcos has made. We'll try to get PPCRV, in particular, the
Yes.
Parish Pastoral for Responsible Voting. And
Yes, to see what's happening
To see
there.
what's happening, because the
Yes.
charge is, supposedly this information of cheating came from a PPCRV volunteer.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, Maria, thanks for that update on the headline of Rappler. But before we proceed, we'd like to call on Stacey De Jesus, who is heads our social media section here at Rappler, to give us an update and let us know what's happening out there on social media. Stacey?
Hi, Cheche. Thank you. Hi, Cheche and Maria. So last night, we actually saw hashtag RP69 fanfic trending online. That's Republic of the Philippines 69 fan fiction, and it's actually pretty crazy. If you look at the tweets, there are 140 character sexual innuendos featuring Sebastian Duterte, the son, of course, of Rodrigo Duterte, yes, and the son of Bongbong Marcos, Sandro Marcos. It started with film critic Philbert D, who tweeted at 9:43 p.m. last night, May 10. He said, "I'd like to announce my new project, a Sandro Marcos Sebastian Duterte slash fiction. I'd like to introduce," so the first tweet goes, quote, "I'd like to introduce you to my iron fist," said Baste to the quivering Marcos scion. And let's just see a couple of tweets. So really, it's the creativity of the Filipino humor here at play, right? At Jedi Jed says, quote, "While Baste and Sandro are under the sheets, someone knocks. Binuksan ng ilaw at sumigaw, pills." So that's in reference with Alma Moreno's quote, of course. And what do you call this position? Sandro asked with amazement. "The Davao Death Squat," said Baste. So it's pretty crazy. You can actually read the story on Rappler. It's very, very funny. But let's move on now to the wrap of the elections. We have this story on Rappler, how the presidential and vice presidential candidates fared on social media. First one, of course, according to our partner Facebook, we are actually now up to date the most engaged elections in the Asia Pacific, with engaging 22 million people throughout Facebook, producing 268 million interactions, meaning the inclusion of likes, posts, comments, and shares. We can see here also the ranking of our presidential candidates. Of course, Rodrigo Duterte dominating the conversation, followed by Mar Rojas, Grace Po, Jejomar Binay, and Defensor Santiago. Coincidentally, this is also the ranking of the presidential candidates in the unofficial partial results. This cannot be said. Cannot be said also. I mean, it's not the same for the vice presidential candidates. With Alan Peter Cayetano leading the conversation, I'm guessing this is, of course, because he is the vice president of the most discussed candidate on Facebook, Rodrigo Duterte. But Leni Robredo and Ferdinand Marcos also the same with the unofficial partial results, are the second and third in the Facebook conversation. We can see here also data from Twitter. These are the most discussed vice presidential candidates, with the purple one, Trillanes, being engaged on January 8th to May 7. That's of course because when he started to challenge Rodrigo Duterte to open his bank accounts. But he was almost non-existent in the conversation days before that. So.
For you is have the number of tweets and Facebook posts gone up or down since the election day?
If it's since the election day, if we're comparing it to the overall engagement, of course, on social media, we've already seen, trends like Aldab producing 44 million tweets a day. So this is actually not surprising. But what's surprising here, of course, because this is election and politics in general. So before this, people weren't really that much engaged. Every time there's only a viral topic that's relatable, easy to absorb, easy to understand, that's when only the conversation kicks in. But considering this, yes, there has been, especially because of the vice presidential race right now, very tight. And of course, Rodrigo Duterte, the conversation has spiked a lot. We can also see they have not only attached themselves, of course, to candidates, but also on issues. So this is really nice. According to Facebook, transparency is the leading issue on Facebook right now. Even according to our partner Twitter, this is also the leading conversation. So both on Facebook and Twitter, transparency, particularly corruption, is the most discussed issue. Consistent also with Twitter is the discussion on social welfare, defense and foreign policy, and of course, education, particularly on growth and taxes. Let's go here with the discussion on Facebook for our presidential candidates. Of course, on election day, Rodrigo Duterte, as expected, has been dominating the conversation, but there was a spike in the conversation for Grace Poe when she conceded.
Okay. Stacey, let me interrupt you there. Before we continue, Stacey, let's go back to a field report from Pat Esmaquel, who is at Comelec. Let's see what's happening there vis-a-vis the protest of Bongbong Marcos and any updates. Pat?
Hi, Cheche.
Yes.
Kanina lang, mainit na balita dito sa Comelec. Nagdeklara ng special elections ang Comelec sa 52 na polling precincts, affecting more than 17,600 voters sa buong Pilipinas. Apat na rason ang sinabi ng Comelec para dito sa special elections. Number one, may mga lugar na walang na-print na balota. Number two, meron ding mga misdelivered official ballots. May nakulang din ang official ballots sa ibang lugar. At sa maraming lugar din, merong mga security concerns. So, 17,657 voters exactly ang naapektuhan nito. At magkakaroon ng special elections sa mga lugar na ito sa Sabado. Cheche.
Sabay-sabay ang elections nito sa Sabado, Pat?
Yes, para sa 52 polling precincts. Ngayon, tinanong din namin si Comelec spokesman James Jimenez kung paano ba, pwede bang ituloy ang canvassing o mag-proclaim ng ilang mga national candidate kung hindi pa natatapos yung special elections. Ang sabi ni Comelec spokesman James Jimenez, kung makakaapekto doon sa outcome, kunyari ng mga senatorial candidates, yung 17,000 votes, kailangan baka ipagpaliban ang proclamation kung magpo-proclaim na. Pero kung hindi, kailangan din daw natin tignan yung big picture, Cheche.
Okay. Saan-saan itong mga presintong ito? Kalat-kalat ba o nasa isang lugar lang?
Yes, medyo kalat-kalat siya. Para lang magbigay ako ng idea kung saan-saan yung mga ito. Meron sa Cebu, Meron sa Sarangani, sa Marinduque, sa Antique, sa Northern Samar, Lanao del Sur at Sulu. Nakapost ang listahan ng mga lugar na ito sa rappler.com sa homepage. Inaanyayahan natin yung mga viewers na pumunta rin sa homepage natin para makita yung kompletong listahan ng mga lugar at yung mga eksaktong bilang ng mga voter na affected sa mga lugar na ito.
Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo, Pat Esmaquel from COMELEC, giving us the latest that there are 52 precincts that will have special elections this Saturday.
Can I throw? Pat, are you
Yes.
still on? Paterno? Oh, he's out. Okay,
Oh.
sorry. That's okay.
So
No,
52,
no, no.
just like you had said, right?
Yes,
52 affecting 17,000 votes.
Yes.
And if it becomes material, if it's not material, then they will not continue, correct? And if it's material, they will continue. Stacy, back to you and the social media report.
Thank you, Cheche. So again, on Facebook, consistently on election day, Rodrigo Duterte has been leading the conversation, graceful picking up after when she conceded. We have this data also from Twitter, the share of voice and the share of authors. We can see the orange being the share of voice, meaning that's the level of discussion for them, and the share of authors, the number of people discussing about them. And what's interesting here is Binay having the largest, having a huge number of discussion, but only very few people talking about him, producing more tweets than their number, of course. The same cannot be said. Yes.
After the elections already?
This is throughout. This is throughout the campaign, yes.
Okay.
For Duterte, though, he has more unique authors contributing to the discussion about him. So that's what's interesting here. For our vice presidential candidates, this is on election day. Alan Peter Cayetano and Ferdinand Marcos have been leading the conversation, but as soon as the results kicked in, the conversation on Cayetano dropped. And then we saw Robredo rising and then going neck and neck all throughout. But as soon as, and then Marcos was leading here, of course, that during that time. Overnight, Robredo, conversation on her picked up. And this is because people were actually wishing for her to overtake Marcos, which around at 3:19, of course, she did. Here we have the Twitter data on election day as well. Overall, this conversation, #election 2016, has produced 4 million tweets, picking up around 10:36 a.m. because this is the time when COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez picked up the tweet on Kathniel posting a photo with their ballot. Around also here at 6:34, the conversation picked up, and this is when the results started to come in. We can also look at the overall growth, compare it before and after. Before the campaign, Grace Poe and Binay has had a huge growth, but only Duterte has spiked in terms of growth after the elections. As for total followers, though, Miriam Santiago continues to be the social media rock star of social media, but of course Rodrigo Duterte has more organic, engaged community. So that's
Okay.
it for us.
Thank you very much, Stacy. That's the current picture of the social media activity. 4 million, that's quite impressive. And when Maria was talking to the Twitter contact in Singapore, they were quite impressed with that number. Thank you very much, Stacy De Jesus. We now move on to the PPCRV, where we have Ana Singson de Villa, who will tell us about what's happening at PPCRV. Ana, are you there?
Hi, hello, yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon. Can you
Good
give us
afternoon.
an update of what is happening at the PPCRV?
Well, right now we're continuing to show the transmission results which come from the COMELEC server that is housed in PPCRV. Let me just clarify. A lot of people seem to think that all the data comes from PPCRV. That's not true. The data that all the networks and all the political parties are actually using right now come from a COMELEC server that happens to be in the building of PPCRV. The COMELEC server for the past 3 elections have actually been placed inside the PPCRV premises. And from the server, several groups are actually mandated by law and also accredited by COMELEC to be attached. And those groups are PPCRV, KBP, UNA, Liberal Party, NPC, PDP Laban, CNN, TV5, Rappler, GMA7, ABS-CBN, NAMFREL, and Philippine Daily Inquirer. So all of us source our data from the COMELEC server, which just happens to be in PPCRV. So I'm trying to clarify that because everybody is thinking that the data is all sourced from PPCRV. No, we all source, PPCRV included, we all source our data from the COMELEC server, which happens to be in the PPCRV compound. So as of now, what we're doing is we're actually showing the transmissions that we are sourcing from the COMELEC server in our compound. And I think when I left the compound, because I'm running to another meeting, it was already at 95.54% of transmission. So we're showing that, and on top of that, we have ERs being flown in from all points of the country, and we are actually manually encoding those so that we could bash them against the transmitted data to see if that they actually match.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that you have a clarification there about the location of that server so that it does not get mistaken as your own. What is your reaction to the announcement of COMELEC about the special elections that are going to be held in 52 precincts amounting to about 17,000 votes on Saturday?
Well, I hope they do it as quickly as possible because that's one of the reasons why our transmissions are really slowing down, because many of the balanced transmissions are actually showing failure of elections. And the sooner they do that, the sooner we'll be able to see that vote. So I really hope they complete it on Saturday because they haven't, I think, fully declared failure of elections in all the balanced areas, and also haven't even settled on Saturday yet. So the sooner that's done, the better, because what people don't understand is they're thinking, why are we getting stuck at this 95.5%, and then every hour it just goes up by 0.01. I guess that's because of the failure of elections, and we need to see that data already. So I hope they really do those special elections very, very soon.
Okay.
And the OAV count as well, which still accounts for, in our estimation, around 1 million total registered voters, have not yet been accounted for also. So I'm really hoping those get transmitted fairly quickly.
So 1 million votes is quite material for the senatorial race, for the vice presidential race, which are tightly contested at the last two slots and between Congresswoman Robredo and Senator Marcos.
Yes, that's right.
Speaking of Senator Marcos, what is your take on his request for the COMELEC to stop the unofficial count?
Well, I think, the count is not just for Senator Marcos. The count is for the entire Philippine citizenry, for the voting public. It's our count. We're all stakeholders here. It's not anybody's count. It's a democracy. So we have a right to see that with transparency all the way through. My fear is that if the count is stopped, people will even have will have room to say things and to make allegations because they don't see what's happening. Whereas if you're seeing the count constantly being shown, you can see that there is some transparency or effort at transparency at least. So I don't agree in stopping the count. This is a democracy and people have a right to know.
Okay, well said. Thank you very much.
What about Bongbong Marcos says? Hi, Anna. This is Maria Ressa.
Hi, Maria.
Hello. What Bongbong Marcos actually said that part of the reason he thinks that cheating has happened is because of information that supposedly came from a PPCRV volunteer. Is that true? Do you know anything about that?
Absolutely not. I heard he had a press conference, and if I may correct you, I wasn't there, but I was briefed, I was briefed that what he actually said was he got information about a glitch from one of the accredited, organizations or org watchers in PPCRV. Now, the accredited watchers in PPCRV, as you very well know, there are two areas in PPCRV. One is our command center where our volunteers go to encode, and the other one is the high security area where Rappler also is.
Yes.
And in that high security area, you know that very well because you're there. I see you there too. There are 10 organizations of us who are part of that workstation connection room, that server room. That's a very high security area.
Yes.
I would think that's what he's referring to, not the PPCRV volunteer, because he did say one of the accredited organizations in PPCRV, and that's what I want to clarify. The server is in PPCRV. It is not our server. It is COMELEC server. It just happens to be in PPCRV.
Got it. And
so I really don't appreciate his trying to palm this off on PPCRV at all.
So the last question from me, at least before I give you back to Chacha, is the overseas vote. How long will it take to count this, and do you expect this to make any significant differences for the vice presidential race?
Okay, you know, I'm glad you asked it, Maria, because I just asked Commissioner Botlam about that a while ago. Because if you look at the breakdown, it's actually areas like Washington, and big areas like Washington, Canada, Saudi Arabia, UAE, that have not transmitted yet. And the total registered voters in the OAB that have not transmitted yet would be something like 1 million, because we did a precinct to total voter registration analysis. It's roughly 1 million for the OAB. But you have to realize, I'm sure you know that in the OAB, there's only roughly 30% turnover. So maybe there's still around 300,000 votes there. When I asked Commissioner Lim, I said, come on, there's very good transmission in Washington and in Canada. So how come we're not getting it yet? Apparently, what he said was that everything gets consolidated in the capital city. Like for the U.S., everything has to go, all the ERs have to go to the capital, which is Washington. And then when it's there, they consolidate it, and then that's when they transmit. Same for other areas, like in Saudi Arabia, it's in Riyadh. This is what he told me. He goes, and they have no control over the speed, the distance, the travel time, and the means of travel in those countries. So when I asked him, you think within this week, he said, we have no control over that because it's another country. And it really depends when they can all go to the capital and send it. That's what he said.
Okay, Anna, one more question. How about the absentee voting? The absentee votes, have they all been accounted for?
The absentee votes, I have to look at that, but I didn't see them. I didn't see them as part of the list. Untransmitted precincts. I don't recall seeing them there, but I can look at that into that in detail. But aside from the 1 million OAB total registered votes of 1 million, there's still around 1.5 total registered voters who have not transmitted yet in the Philippines alone, in our local terrain alone. And then if you look at 80%, the turnover is around 80% this election. If it's around 80%, that's still around 1.2 million. So 1.2 million roughly from the local precincts and another roughly 300 from the OAB. So we're accounting for still 1.5, so it's still very material.
Yes, that's right. Well, thank you very much, Ana de Villasingson. Thank you for your update. And we hope that we get through this election soon. Thank you. Okay, we're back here at the desk. I think as we begin to wind down the coverage that we have been doing, it's time to look back and see where we are and what has happened.
Sure.
I was listening to your talk to the Twitter person in Singapore earlier.
Yeah.
And the numbers are amazing.
Yeah.
Huh? When we think about what was different this election, I think that social media and the participation of the general public has been a very substantial factor in moving this election. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that not only, I mean, you could see from the data of both Twitter and Facebook that social media played a large role in empowering people. So anyone who was marginalized, anyone who wasn't part of the discussion, and in addition to those who came on, if you're on your feed, you can't help but see it, because when people begin to discuss it, there's a ripple effect and it cascades.
Right.
So I would actually say that part of the reason Rudy Duterte won was precisely because of social media. You're seeing, he not only was his campaign,
His supporters
this
were
was the
very,
most organic,
very active.
extremely, and they were defensive for him, and they felt ownership over his campaign, and that is, we've not seen that yet.
Yes,
There was no
yes.
other. Very late in the game, you saw Leni Robredo, Leni and Cheese supporters. In fact, we just had a story now that said Cheese supporters switched to Leni to prevent a Marcos win, which may also explain that. But again, it was so interesting to watch this groundswell of support, and very early on, you know, internally, I was just saying, we've not seen anything like this. The other thing about social media is that it seems that Duterte, both his strengths and his weaknesses, this is actually amplified by social media. Social media, inherent in it is the idea that you move away from authority to authenticity.
Right.
As we've seen, you're not ever sure what will come out of Rudy Duterte's mouth. I mean, you can't be more authentic than that, right? And this is part of what worries people. But that authenticity is part of how he gained so much support, I think.
Yes, and the other impressive note that was made was that it was the people, the ordinary folks, not the very popular users of social media who were being retweeted. I mean, I think that's if you're talking about access and if you're talking about opening it up to the general public, this is proof that access was universal.
What you saw is that ordinary people realized they could make a difference, and they began to organize on social.
Yes.
And that was also part of the problem of it. I mean, in the middle of the campaign, particularly the tail end this year, in April, you saw supporters of Rudy Duterte really doing things that pushed the viciousness. I mean, one analyst called it a vicious campaign, right? Part of that was because the marginalized, I would say,
were able to speak.
They not only were able to speak, they began to dictate. Because most people who were used to power, most people who can wield it, hold back a little bit.
Are moderated.
Right.
They're moderated.
They hold back a little bit. And this time around, you could see that there was a self-organizing group.
Yes, and they were also saying that the conversations were bottom up, from the ground all the way up, instead of the other way around, which is the traditional way that power structures are constructed, right?
The activity on social media reached out and affected the real world. I mean, and the best example of that was when Rappler was forced to actually write an editorial when Duterte supporters attacked and targeted this young boy at UP Los Baños who asked a question, and it was actually our cameras that caught it. He asked a question of Rudy Duterte. The supporters felt that he was impertinent and disrespectful, and so we were watching in horror as they organized themselves
against him.
In anger, not just against him, but actually attacked him. So one chain I saw, it was actually a girl who then said, "I found his number," put his cell phone number there, and then when you're talking to him, he was saying that their whole family actually wound up not getting these calls and intimidation tactics. So, one last thing is they even created a Facebook page that was so vicious. It's the title of that page was #RIP, and then the name and the picture of this child.
I mean, I think this doesn't speak well of social media. I mean, one side tells us that it's liberating, that it opens up opportunities, that it gives access to the voiceless, but at the same time, it allows bullies to inflict harm on other people. And for me, that is a negative in that sense.
Well, it happens in the real world, right? I mean,
so this is just a reflection of the real world.
Everything. Oh, okay. So I think there's a press conference. There's a press conference.
Oh, okay.
That's coming in, and we can. This is from where? The Commission on Elections. Lenny Robredo.
Kaya para
Let's listen to the audio.
Na ito'y minanipula lang ay malaking insulto sa kanilang pagsisikap. Kita naman po natin ang takbo ng partial at unofficial tally. Nakalagay po ito sa mga website na pwedeng tingnan ng publiko sa anumang oras. Kung mayroon silang nakitang anomalya sa bilangan, mas maganda sigurong idaan natin sa tamang proseso at huwag idaan sa media ang reklamo. Doon sa katatapos lamang na press con ng kampo ni Senator Marcos, may mga ibinato pong tanong sa Commission on Elections, kaya dapat pong masagot ito ng COMELEC sa lalong madaling panahon upang mabigyang linaw ang publiko. Maraming salamat po. Mayroon pong tulungan mula sa ating mga kasamahan sa media. Bigyan niyo po ang pagkakataon magpakilala. Ako po si Georgina Hernandez, ang spokesperson ni Congresswoman Lenny Robredo.
Telensa Manila. Would you like to address yung claims nila na yung result daw ng kanilang
That's Georgina Hernandez, who is the spokesperson of Leni Robredo, asking COMELEC. Can we listen in again?
Marcos by 189,000, around that figure. So, do you have any internal surveys also to dispute that figure?
Tungkol po sa usapin ng exit polls, nais po namin bigyang linaw na hindi natin magagamit bilang basehan ang nabanggit na exit polls. Bakit ho? Hindi na nga po natapos ang pagpapatakbo ng exit polls na ito dahil naunahan na ito ng pagpapalabas ng opisyal na boto mula sa ating transparency server. Napag-unahan na ng panahon sa napakabilis na paglabas ng results sa ating transparency server ay hindi na po tinapos ang ating exit polls, kaya hindi po natin maaaring sabihin na dahil lamang po si Senator Marcos dito ay mayroon tayong hindi pagkakapareho doon sa transparency server.
What internal surveys? What does your internal surveys?
Sa totoo lang, pinagbabasihan din po namin kung ano yung nakikita nating lahat sa TV. Simula pa nung unang araw, doon ho kami nakatutok sa mga resulta na lumalabas sa mga iba't ibang website at iba't ibang mga media channels. So, pare-pareho po tayo ng tinitingnan na resulta at malinaw po ang nakikita nating resulta na tuloy-tuloy po ang pagtaas po ni Kong Leni sa ating vice presidential race. Pinagbabasihan din po namin yung mga survey na naganap right before elections. At nakita naman po natin na lumamang si Congresswoman Leni Robredo bago tayo pumasok sa Mayo 9. At hindi po natin may kakaila na lamang po si Congresswoman Leni bago nung election. Si Ma'am.
Jane Castaneda po sa ABS-CBN. So yung pinabanggit po ba ninyo na dapat nilang pasagot na lang sa COMELEC o yung sa computer na pinagpala?
Opo, may nabanggit po kasi ang kampo ni Senator Marcos nung press con kanina tungkol doon sa sinasabing new script. New script, bago. Nagtatanungan pa kami yung una, new script o computer command. At sinasabi nila, sa totoo lang hindi po namin alam kung totoo ito at anong basehan ito. Pero ang sa amin lang, kung sinasabi nila na nagkaroon ng new script or computer command at about 7:30 p.m., nais po namin bigyang linaw na umaakyat pa ho ang boto ni Senator Marcos pagkatapos ng 7:30 p.m. In fact, pinakamataas na botong natanggap ni Senator Marcos, 8:25 p.m. Nag-peak yung lamang ni Senator Marcos at 935,838 after noong sinasabing new script na ipinasok noong 7:30 p.m. At dahil po ang transparency server, pwede po natin itong ma-check sa iba-iba pong mga existing tayo na transparency server. Pero sa tingin po namin, mas nararapat na ang COMELEC po ang sumagot doon po sa mga binabanggit kanina. Total, nagbigay naman daw po sila ng sulat sa COMELEC. So, hintayin po natin ang sagot ng COMELEC sa bagay na ito. At kami rin po ay maghihintay sa kung ano man po ang magiging response o kaya aksyon ng COMELEC sa bagay na ito.
Ma'am, sa tansya po ba ninyo, anong mga areas pa yung hindi pa natin nakukuha yung resulta dahil nga sa may problema sa transmission? At sa mga areas na po, ilang porsyento po ba yung kay Rodrigo?
Tulad po ng nabanggit ko kanina, ang pinagbabasihan lang po namin ng kung ano pa yung hindi pa natatransmit na vote ay siyang mga nakikita rin ng lahat ng mga Pilipino. Yung mga nakikita natin sa internet, yung mga nakikita natin sa media, doon lang din po kami tumitingin. At batay doon sa datos na yon, nakikita natin na may mga paparating pang boto mula sa bahagi ng Mindanao, sa ARMM. Mayroon ding mga paparating na boto, panaka-naka sa kada probinsya. Maliliit na lang talaga yung balanse sa kada probinsya. So hindi na natin masasabi sa ngayon na concentrated in certain areas except yung pinakamababa natin sa ARMM at syempre yung tingin ko naman nabanggit din kanina, yung overseas votes.
Pero given nga po, given the fact that there are still these areas mo, ay kahit na gano'n po kaliit, dahil sa dikdikang laban, all of these numbers matter.
Apo.
So, based on your internal assessment,
Opo.
kahit po ba pumasok lahat itong mga areas na to, ahead pa rin po sa
Mamaya ho, may iimbitahan akong resource person. Tapusin lang po sana natin yung open forum regarding our statement. Pagkatapos po niya na yung tatawagin po namin ng resource person namin na maaaring magpaliwanag kung ano pa yung mga maaaring maging galaw sa resulta ng ating eleksyon sa pagkapangalawang Pangulo. Meron pa ho bang mga ibang katanungan?
Hi ma'am, sa name of Jimmy Sagan. Asan po si Kong Lenny right now and ano po yung reaction niya dun sa naging press conference ni NEDCAMP ni Senator Marcos?
Sa ngayon po si Congresswoman Leni Robredo, tulad ho sa tingin namin ng karamihan sa mga Pilipino ay nag-aabang sa pagtatapos ng bilangan sa resulta ng eleksyong ito. Siya po ay nag-aasam na magkaroon ng malinaw na resulta ang eleksyong ito para naman magkaroon siya ng pagkakataon din na mag-spend time sa kanyang mga anak. Hindi lamang ngayong eleksyon na talagang naubos ang oras niya, pero even during the campaign period ay matagal na oras na rin yung nawala sa kanyang mga anak. So, siya po ay nagbabantay at tulad din natin ay nagnanais na magkaroon din ng resulta yung eleksyon na to para siya ay makabalik sa pagkakaroon ng oras sa kanyang mga anak.
Have you spoken with her na? And ano po yung reaction niya dun sa sinabi ng kampo ni Senator Marcos? And expect ba na ito?
Hindi pa po kami nagkakausap sa ngayon kasi katatapos lang nung press conference. Right after this, magkakaroon kami ng pagkakataon na mag-usap at makuhanan siya ng reaksyon sa bagay na ito. Kagabi kami, nagkaroon kami ng pagkakataon na mag-update tungkol sa iba't ibang mga detalye na binabantayan pa natin. Yung balanse na 5% na hindi pa natatransmit na boto ay napag-usapan din namin kagabi at maayos naman at malinaw ang aming naging diskusyon.
Final from my end. How confident are we na mariretain ni Kong Lenny sa pagpasok ngayon ng overseas absentee voting?
Sa ngayon po, mayroon kaming resource person na maaaring sumagot sa bagay na yan.
Ma'am, may panawagan pa tayo sa kampo ni Bongbong Marcos.
Sa amin lang po, sana po ang lahat ng mga paratang na kanilang binabanggit sa media ay maidaan sa formal na pamamaraan. Yung ipasa natin sa COMELEC ng mahusay, huwag natin gawan ng paraan na maimpluwensyahan ang isipan ng publiko sa kung anuman ang sinasabi nila na nangyayari, ginagawa, nagagawa sa eleksyong ito. Dahil sa tingin po namin ay narinig natin mula sa mga foreign observers of these elections, pinupuri nila yung nangyaring eleksyon, pinakamalinis, pinakamabilis. At nakikita nila na walang dayaang nagaganap sa nangyayaring eleksyon na to. So, sana po kung may mga sumasalungat sa bagay na yon ay idaan natin sa mga tamang proseso na nasa lugar naman. Nais ko pong tawagan si Professor Alison Yap mula sa Ateneo de Manila University upang ipaliwanag yung naging paggalaw ng mga boto sa pagkapangalawang Pangulo.
Gusto ko lang pong i-explain ng mabuti at simple kung ano yung nangyari sa paggalaw ng boto ni Senator Marcos at ni Congressman Denny. Dahil binigyan lang po ako ng sandaling minuto, sinulat ko na po lahat. So, explain ko na lang po. Sabihin natin sa buong Pilipinas, meron pong 150 na tao, no? 150 katao. Yun nga lang po, nakahati po ito sa tatlong area, no? Para lang simple, Area 1, Area 2, Area 3. And then ang pag-usapan natin ay yung mga mahihilig sa maling at yung mahihilig sa corn beef. Para simple, no? Doon sa 150 na tao, 70 doon mahilig sa maling. No? And 80 doon, sabihin natin mahilig sa corn beef.
Okay, we were just listening in on that press conference where the spokesperson of Leni Robredo, Ms. Gutierrez, was recounting what had happened and appealed to those who are making accusations about cheating to just wait for the processes to take place, the proper processes put in place by COMELEC. We now have with us here at our table, aside from Maria, who is now turned anchor to analyst, we now have Jail Cordero, who is a sociologist and a very keen observer of what has been happening in the last 24 hours. What have you observed, Jail, in the last 24 hours?
In many ways, Cheche, this is no longer surprising to me. As I was mentioning to you upon joining you here, Nicole and I were in Tacloban last Friday to monitor the trends there, so to speak. And we were invited, thankfully, to the sortie that Bongbong Marcos and the Romualdez has organized for their followers. This was at Tacloban Astrodome. Interestingly, of course, we were already expecting what kind of rhetoric he would articulate there for his followers. Of course, there was what sociologists would consider collective effervescence, that electricity that one feels when everyone gathers together, in a sort of ritual. In fact, they were singing a lot of songs about the nation, from Ako ay Pilipino to and the like.
Okay.
Now, when Bongbong Marcos gave his speech there, I suppose it was not the first time that he said it, but it was certainly the first time for me to hear him say that in person. He said that if we lose his elections, most likely we have been cheated. And I felt that at that point in time, he was, well, there are two ways to approach that. One is he was conditioning already his followers that in the event that they lose, then they have something to say to the public, right? Face saving, so to speak. But on the other hand, it could also be the emotions or the sentiments that his own followers have from the ground up, so to speak, about the impending. Well, there's that fear amongst our informants. Potential cheating. Yes. In fact, Cheche, as we were going around, different communities there, we were interviewing people for our research. This is the Vote of the Poor 2016, funded by the Ateneo. So many times, people were telling us that they're afraid that there could be cheating. Of course, some of them are supportive of other candidates as well.
Yes. That's very interesting because I read somewhere that Sigmund Freud, the analyst and the psychologist, said that there are some types of leaders who prey on the fears of certain groups. Does this fit into what you observe?
You can say that, but maybe I won't do a Sigmund Freud analysis here. I think it has to do also with how do I put it? Maybe yes, at one level it's very Freudian, preying on the fears that people have.
It's the power of suggestion.
That's right, but in many ways that also disregards what people actually feel, because my view is that this is not an isolated case. This is symptomatic of the general distrust that people have about government and its institutions. So when we go to LTO, for example, apply for license, most likely, and I have experienced it myself, we have to bribe, right? Because the system is designed to fail you as an applicant. The same thing for many other processes in the bureaucracy. Of course, strides have been made over the years to simplify the processes, and there's that citizens charter, for example, to make things efficient. But the fact remains that the institutions in general are still vulnerable to bribery, for example, or vulnerable to corruption and cheating. So the distrust that people have about the elections is symptomatic of this general distrust that we have of other institutions.
Did you feel that this particular election, 2016, that there was a lot of fear being shared by many about possible cheating?
Say that again.
Did you feel, as we approached the elections, that people had cheating at the top of their minds?
Yes. In fact, surveys, right? Every time Pulse Asia or SWS would release their results of their surveys, they would almost immediately receive accusations that their results are rigged, even though the trends are actually very similar. You know, SWS releases survey results that are very similar to what Boss Asia would also say. So in that sense, there's that readiness amongst different kinds of followers. Ultimately, in the Philippines, after all, right, it's either you win the game or you were cheated. Precisely because the institutions are not highly trusted in the first place.
In the past, they've always said, if you lose, you were cheated.
Yes. And
if you won, you cheated.
Yeah. I mean, funny, right? When Bongbong Marcos was ahead of the game, at least before the sunset.
In the first few hours.
In the first few hours, right?
Yes.
No accusations were being made about the counting being carried out at PPCRV as rigged. But later on, there were these accusations. And then I even saw some of my friends on Facebook and on social media, people making some scientific calculations about how
they were cheated.
That's right, how they were cheated. So making these calculations about the amount of or the number or the magnitude and percentages that.
Personally, I
that they were
didn't
losing.
feel that there was a lot of talk about cheating once the count had begun, and perhaps because of the sheer speed. Maria, correct me if I'm wrong. The sheer speed of the count discounted everything about cheating somehow.
For me, it seemed like it. I mean, and again, we were also surprised. And the COMELEC had so many problems leading up to this, right? And in the final days, they did say that this was going to be the fastest transmission, and it was.
Yes.
But perhaps what reinforces it is that the surveys, at least in the last two rounds, were already showing that Robredo and Marcos were already on each other's necks. So I guess that matters.
And Duterte was so far
that's
ahead.
right. Yeah. So imagine
there was no room for speculation.
So imagine if Mar Rojas, for example, were inching his way closer to Duterte, that would really cause a lot of fear on people. But that didn't happen.
What about Miriam Santiago, who was the running mate of Bongbong Marcos? She has chimed in.
Yes, she did.
I saw the Facebook entry saying that she feels that the government is engaging in manufacturing numbers.
It's the same rhetoric, Cheche. It's not really surprising. I have much respect for the woman, but we also know that she has a record. In 2001, was it not, for example, right? She pandered to people's frustrations about EDSA 2, for example, and she was clearly in support of Erap Estrada at that time.
Or that she was cheated during the election with Ramos.
That's right, in 1992.
Yes.
So in many ways, I feel that, of course, it is not surprising, but at the same time, because all of these statements are simply speculative at this point in time. No evidence, no clear evidence has been offered as of yet. And I think that is what makes these statements irresponsible, if I may say that. Of course, I want to be objective, but at the same time, I have to make some, call one way or another. And in this case, if the allegations are without evidence, then simply they're pandering to people's fears. They're adding fuel to the fire, if I may say that.
Okay. From a sociologist's point of view, do you see any changes in the people's reactions to, for example, elections? Have you seen any changes in how they are looking now at elections because of the conduct of this particular election?
Sure. Well, for starters, participation has increased. I was looking at the statistics that you compiled.
Is it 81 or 85?
Yes, 81%. And then in 2013, it was about 75, 73, thereabouts. And then it was lower before that. It peaked in 1998 when Joseph Estrada ran. So I suspect that it has to do with the characters involved, right? And how contentious the playing field is.
Well, this was a particularly contentious field of presidential and vice presidential
And in many ways, it's commendable because it's in moments like this that the character and the quality of our democracy shine through, right? Of course, you've got the saboteurs. Of course, you've got the trolls. But it's part of democracy. We disagree with them, of course. Rappler and even I get a lot of bashing for what we say or what we don't say, for that matter, right? But it's part of our democracy.
Is our democracy doing well?
It depends, right? It depends.
You hesitate.
Yes, of course, because I mean, sociologists are always very critical about this. If we come up with a checklist, most likely we tick all the boxes. We've got a judiciary, working judiciary. We've got working legislative assembly, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, and this is Nicole Curato's big project, democracy has to also be assessed in terms of the quality of discourses that people engage in, right?
Okay. And on that score?
And on that score, I don't have any objective score, but I might say, I would like to say that we are improving, right? On social media, for example. So we have people who are able to articulate. We've got millennials. I mean, I won't hesitate to say that I am still a millennial because 1982 is the cutoff year.
Okay.
And
All
people like me can contribute something to the public sphere. Not necessarily very popular, but at least people like me, Rappler does a great job in bringing these voices together. Sometimes cacophony, but sometimes also important, even though it's very noisy. Sometimes, social media can really be very noisy, cacophonous.
Is it a thinking citizenry?
What we have, it depends on how we approach it. Why? Based on our study, for example, Vote of the Poor 2016, we partnered with SWS to identify the qualities that people are looking for. I've said this a couple of times here already, but it's worth reiterating them.
Definitely.
The top 3 qualities that people are looking for across classes and across the regions are concern for the poor, principio, and moral integrity. People like us would actually look for something else. What might we look for? Platform, experience in government, and the more rational attributes, so to speak. But they don't figure in those rankings. They're in fact midway or even perhaps in the bottom.
But moral integrity is a very interesting trait because historically, in the past presidents that we have elected, moral integrity was not up there.
The kinds of presidents you mean, referring to the presidents that we elected?
Yes.
Good point. Because we have to factor in the wider context, what kind of candidates were involved. So clearly, we don't want to call into question Mar Roxas's integrity and sincerity, for example.
Like, for example, the charges of corruption, of the SAL-N not being filed, these things were not brought to the fore in past. Even your moral character in terms of your relationships was either discounted or not brought up.
I guess there were. It depends on how they were brought up and whether those who brought them up were reliable also, right? Think about it.
But you're saying that this is one of the 3 characteristics being looked for.
Yeah, I can focus on this particular election season.
Okay.
Binay, not too long ago, right, was up there.
Yes.
This was before Poe, this was before Roxas made that decision. And he was the big enemy. He had concern for the poor.
Yes.
And perhaps his integrity was not yet in question until the corruption allegations were brought to the table.
Okay.
That was a very powerful move on the part of his enemies because how can you be actually concerned about the poor? In other words, the bigger question is how can you be in reality be concerned about the poor if you have all these lavishness? Impossible to achieve given a mayor's salary and a vice president's salary, amongst other things. So I think people are willing to balance them out, you see. They have their own assessments. In Tacloban, for example, where I've just been for my research. So we asked them, whom would you vote for, or what kind of candidates are you looking for? And they would always say, we want this candidate to win, but although he or she is not popular, because she or he won't make us leave this place. Many of them have rebuilt their shelters in no-build zones. We have to bear that in mind. People think that if you're not from Tacloban, most likely you would think that Tacloban has come back to life again. If you look at the downtown area, if you look at the malls, yes. But when you look at the outskirts, those barangays, those coastal villages, for example, that suffered the brunt of Yolanda, many of them, yes, some of them have already been relocated, but some of them have decided to stay. And why are they staying? It's not because they're willing to fight it out until the next Yolanda happens. It's simply because they don't have livelihoods elsewhere. And any candidate who can assure them that they can stay and they won't be relocated,
gets their vote.
Gets their vote precisely because they've seen how it has already panned out among the other, their former neighbors who were relocated to other places. They lost their livelihoods, and in just a couple of months, they decided to come back to those no-build zones. In other words, people are looking for candidates. I'm not saying it's irrational, even though they're looking for the soft qualities, if I may put them that way, right? If I may put it that way. They are thinking of supporting candidates who would more or less uphold their interests. And that's quite a valid sentiment. Are they thinking? Yes, of course they are thinking. The question
then that's
is,
good news that now we have a thinking voter,
yeah,
as opposed to an emotionally swept voter. Did you see that?
That's right. Although I must say that all elections are emotional at the end of the day.
I was going to disagree.
Yeah.
I was definitely going to.
I mean, yes,
okay.
you've been
Why
everywhere.
do you say that, Maria?
No, I mean, if you go back to just the studies, the academic studies that show that up to 80% of how we make, people in general, how we make decisions in our lives is not based on what we think, it's based on how we feel.
Yes.
Actually, the only reason I cite that is because that's the reason we have mood meters in Rappler, because what we think that in order to get people to think, we first need to get them, we need to capture them, and the way to capture them is actually through their emotions. Isn't advertising is all about that, right?
And if I may say this also, in sociology, we don't really make that distinction between emotionalism and rationality because there are different kinds of rationalities. There's what we call substantive rationality, meaning the values that people uphold. That's rational, albeit substantive. And then there's formal rationality, which is about means ends, the relationship between the means and the ends, and optimizing our resources. Two different mechanisms, but rational nevertheless. Yes.
I agree.
Okay, let's pull out from that a while. Yes, and go to Regina Fernandez. Regina Hernandez. Hi, Regina. Georgina.
Hello?
Yes, Georgina, you're on the line.
For what? Yes, ma'am. There.
Go ahead, please.
Georgina, this is Maria Rasa with Cheche Lazaro, and Jail Cornelio is here with us as well. What exactly did you say? How did you react to Bongbong Marcos's charges?
Excuse me, ma'am. The volume is very low. Sandali lang po.
She can't hear them.
Okay, hi.
Hello?
Yes,
There.
can you hear us now?
Yes, ma'am. This
Okay.
is Georgina Hernandez.
We want to speak to Georgina.
Yes,
Is this Georgina?
Georgina, yes. Georgina?
Georgina, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, Georgina, are you there? This is Rappler. Hello? Okay, while we're waiting for her to come back on the line, you were talking about not being able to separate, not separating the emotional from the rational.
That's right.
But aren't those two intertwined?
Those two, of course, are at the end of the day intertwined. I mean, if I may make it more easier to understand for our viewers, I mean, when we fall in love, right? It's at the same time. It's both, a
rational
and emotional, right?
yeah.
But of course, I use rational in quotes, in the sense that
sometimes they think when you're in love, you're irrational.
Oh, yes, but sociologists would always say that a woman falls in love with a man who is more economically stable, for example. It has to do with the gender expectations, you know. And then when we look at the advertisements, for example, the man always has to be taller, and that seems to be the pattern. I mean, it plays into the expectations that we have of gender. But put that aside. So there, in that sense, it might be irrational. But put that aside.
You know Daniel Kahneman, where he said thinking fast, thinking slow. Do you think about that as emotions, and then, or not really? Thinking fast is your gut reaction. Thinking slow is more rational. Is that the way you would think about it?
But at the end of the day, we cannot really ask people to make a distinction between what they value and what values in terms of the virtues that matter to them, like concern for the poor, for example, and the rational manifestations of such concern for the poor. So when they think about their livelihoods, isn't that rational in an economic sense of the word? Of course, why would they want to move to a relocation site, or why would they want to move to a bunkhouse that is so far from the mercado, from the palengke, which sustains them? And if I may say this, right, we always think of our coastal villagers as fisher folk, but in Tacloban apparently they're no longer fisher folk. Yeah, they're already selling bananas from other provinces.
They just live by the coast.
Because that's the only space that is available to them. So building back better, in other words, has to factor that in. This we are not the first ones to say this, but at the end of the day, livelihoods do matter. So a candidate who gave them that promise, and in fact, in many ways, in Tacloban, the local elections were divided along those lines. Those who would make them leave and those who would make them stay.
All right, now that the results are in and we have more definitive picture of who the new leaders of our nation is. What does that say about the Filipino? The choices that he has made.
Can I quickly show you an update? We just had another update while we were talking, and so I'm just showing you the map view so that you can actually see where their reports are coming from. And this is as of 5:56:34. So just a few minutes ago. And here now we still have Rudy Duterte with 38.5%. Mar Rojas, of course, now he's really run away with it, right? For vice president, the race we're all watching, Leni Robredo still at 35.1% and Bongbong Marcos at 34.6%. We haven't seen this change since last night, but the numbers have changed. So Leni's votes are 13,964,677. And Bongbong Marcos is 13,735,000.
My God, that's really a slim margin, 200,000 votes.
I want to see if there's been any change in the overseas absentee ballot. So this is now as of 5:56. They've counted 22.75% of the precincts. That's 23%. And Bongbong Marcos is far and away ahead at 42.3%. That's only 60,564 votes. Alan Peter Cayetano is second, and Leni Robredo is third with 27,615 votes, or 19.3%. Wow, runaway Rudy Duterte, the overseas ballot is 73%.
This is amazing.
For Duterte.
For Duterte, runaway. The overseas Filipinos, so there are 1.8 million registered voters, and they are overwhelmingly choosing.
Is it segregated according to different countries?
We can break it down.
Yes, that would be great.
I will find out. Let me find out.
Because I lived in Singapore, so I want to know
exactly
what Singaporean Filipinos or what Filipinos in Singapore
what
are
they
thinking.
think.
What they think. Yeah, because they always think about Lee Kuan Yew and.
So what do these results tell you about the Filipino?
Let's focus on the OFWs. That is really an interesting picture here. At first, I thought that Manuel Rojas would actually attract these voters. Simply because Mar Rojas embodies the technocrat, and I suspect that many of our Filipinos are no longer in the blue collar sector. Many of them are already in white collar jobs. And many of them might appreciate, for example, Mar Rojas' technocracy, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I think it has to do with the peace and order situation in the countries where they are based, whether it's Singapore or Hong Kong or in North America or Europe. I also lived in Europe, and one would always fall for the, buti pa dito sa Singapore ang linis-linis. I mean, we were both in Singapore at one point in time. And
it's Disneyland.
It's
Disneyland.
It is Disneyland. Oh, of course. Yes.
Wait, let's interrupt this conversation connection a bit. Let's go to Georgina Hernandez. Georgina, are you finally there?
Yes, yes. Good evening.
Good evening, Georgina. Can you tell us what the reaction of Leni Robredo is to the statements of Bongbong Marcos?
Yes, regarding the recently concluded press conference of Senator Marcos, our camp believes that we should focus on the ongoing count that is happening. We are able to monitor it through the various forms of media available, and we should just continue to be vigilant. And if there are really reasons for the allegations raised with regard to the change in the computer command or the new script introduced, we ask that it be forwarded to proper channels, that a formal complaint be filed, and let COMELEC be the one to respond to such allegations of cheating.
Okay. I think there were several questions about what you're going to do next in the face of these complaints. You were saying that Congresswoman Robredo is taking a break. Is this correct?
No, she is vigilantly monitoring the ongoing results that are being released through the quick count of the COMELEC.
Yeah.
And she is very much informed about the things that are going on right now.
Okay. Now, these irregularities that are being reported, COMELEC has said that a formal complaint has to be filed. Are you aware if a formal complaint has been filed?
At the moment, we are not aware of as to whether a formal complaint has been filed or not. But I think according to the press conference, they submitted a letter to the COMELEC to inquire about these.
Okay.
Were you surprised that these charges were there? Hi, Georgina. This is Maria.
Yes. Hi, Maria.
Hi. Were you surprised that the Marcos camp is making these charges?
Of course, we are surprised, especially because we have heard a lot of positive feedback from foreign correspondents, from foreign experts who have been observing our elections, and we hear from these feedback from our foreign experts that this has been by far the cleanest, the fastest elections that the Philippines has ever had, and a number of them have also noted that this could already be a standard for automated elections worldwide. And for us to hear the camp of Senator Marcos to say these things makes us think what would the basis of these allegations be.
And your next steps?
As for the next step for our camp, we continue to monitor the results that are coming out. We continue to be vigilant in protecting the votes. We still have our volunteers, our lawyers who are on the ground looking into the 5% that has not been transmitted. So through the data available online where they show which areas have not transmitted the votes, we are looking into these areas to ensure that proper transmission of votes and no irregularities be done in the succeeding days, as we really value the integrity of the elections.
Georgina, why do you think the Marcos camp is casting doubt on the entire electoral process?
Well, it would probably be because we are currently in the lead, and what surprises us is that when they were in the lead, we never really heard any doubts casted on the integrity of these elections. It was only when we took the lead that these allegations came about, and that would most probably be the reason why.
Okay, Georgina, one final question. You have heard that COMELEC has declared a failure of elections and that there will be special elections in 52 precincts, which will account for about 17,000 votes.
Yes.
Your reaction, please.
Yes, we were able to catch that statement from the COMELEC with regard to the special elections, but we note the very small number in these areas where special elections need to be held, and based on the trend and the current status of our quick count, we believe that it will not really have a substantial effect on changing the final actual results of of our elections, but we do respect the need to conduct this, and we fully support the need to conduct the special elections, and we continue to hope that the integrity and the, how clean this has all been will continue.
Okay. What is your analysis? Why is
And
the...
this one, are you ready for the long haul? I mean, this may mean a long
extended
count, which brings to mind, which is again about the Arroyo versus FPJ count in 2004. Do you have the resources? Are you ready for this?
Yeah, if it comes to that, in fact, the long haul has started since Monday. Sleep has been very limited since that time, and we are prepared for a long haul. We are prepared to honor the voice of the people through their votes, and all that we want at the moment is for the people's votes to be counted and to be honored. And we are one, in fact, with their camp in hoping and in ensuring that no cheating and this will be a clean election.
Thank you very much, Georgina. Thank you for your insights into this latest glitch in the election process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
Good evening to you too. Okay, back to our conversation here. We were talking about a post-mortem on the elections now. As Maria and I were talking about how the new factors that figured into this election, one of them was social media.
Yes.
And you mentioned that, Jael, that social media has had a large impact on how the elections were conducted. What other new factors did you see that were operating in this in our environment to make the elections how they were, to make it the way it has been?
Sure. Several things, I think, came to focus in this particular election. One is the quality or the means by which vote buying is carried out because of the automation, and we tried to observe some of these. Some cases of vote buying in Tacloban.
You were able to observe this?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, tell us about it.
Normally, we think that when vote buying is carried out or is done by a politician or a candidate, it's meant to convert the individual, right?
Yes.
To support him or her, depending on how much money or how much he or she gave. Our findings show that, our studies show that in the end, people are just willing to accept money from different kinds of candidates and still, for themselves, make their own decision based on their own conscience and the virtues that I spelled out a while ago.
No sense of obligation.
No. In some cases, there is that sense of obligation, but ultimately, if you receive money from 5 different candidates, to whom are you actually obliged?
To yourself.
Right? to yourself, yes, of course, but
Yes.
that's a very middle class and upper class disposition, right? So all these voters' education, messages that some NGOs or some networks are involved in, like saying that, oh, wag mo dapat ibenta ang boto mo kasi binibenta mo rin ang iyong kaluluwa, don't really resonate with at least our informants. And by the way, we are located in different sites: Quezon City, Camarines Sur, Tacloban, and Zamboanga, urban poor, rural poor, conflict poor, disaster poor. So different spaces and settings of poverty. And we notice that people are saying exactly the same things. We want to receive this money because we didn't even ask for it in the first place, amongst
Yes.
other reasons.
But is that a presaging of what can happen to vote buying as a practice?
As a practice, I don't even know if the character has changed because it's only now really that we are able to investigate it in depth like this. I believe Marites Vitug had this interview with Professor Jun Aguilar. He's actually our principal investigator about this. And we also found out, amongst some of the findings we have there, people think that the money that they're getting from these candidates are rightfully theirs. We call it rightful money. We have an acronym, in fact, but letter R is rightful money. Some of them think, for example, that the money that they receive came from their taxes in the first place,
Okay.
or were in fact stolen from
Stolen
them.
money.
Stolen money also. So in that sense, you can view vote buying as one of those mechanisms by which the poor can get back at their own candidates. So the candidates might think that they're actually buying these voters, but in reality, the power relations is not so asymmetrical as it looks.
Do you think that at some point in time, the vote buyers will say it's useless? They're not going to vote for us anyway. Let's not spend money on.
Not necessarily. Why? Because people still expect money to come. So there's that element of it, of vote buying, that one, it is anticipated, it is expected. So we notice, for example, in Tacloban, and this is also in other places, that they know that at this time, there would be these leaders, they call them leaders in some places, tauhan, who would start distributing. Or there's also that particular network. It's very, very strategic, Cheche. And where we were, for example, we noticed that it was taking place not in a private house, but in the very barangay hall.
The distribution center was in the barangay hall.
Exactly. And then we noticed that it has to do with the social capital of whoever was in charge. I cannot say the name of the barangay, of course, but the particular the local politics there has to do with siding with those in power.
So it's institutionalized vote buying.
Institutionalized in a very informal sense. That's a bit oxymoronic, but yes, institutionalized, but in a very informal way. Yes.
Okay. All right. What other changes did you see in this election?
The role of the OFWs, I want to highlight that. We were talking about them just now, right? Again, this season has seen unprecedented voter turnout amongst our OFWs. I can empathize with the sentiments of these OFWs. I was once based abroad, and we might think that they are not as concerned as we are here in the Philippines because they don't seem to understand the local exigencies. But this election disproves that. 200, was it 200,000 or 400,000? I always get confused.
I think it's more like 400,000. I think it's almost 500,000.
Precisely. Yeah. So because in 2013, it was just about 113,000 or thereabouts. So this is like what? Like
a multiplier effect of 4.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And again, going back to my hypothesis, it has to do with the characters involved.
But do the overseas Filipinos get the same sense, the same flavor that we here get when we watch a campaign?
Good point. My view is that it is filtered by their own local understandings by their own transnational understandings of what government and local government should be like. If you live in Singapore, you have a very different understanding of government or governance. You know that it's about efficiency. Bureaucracy is about efficiency. If you're in the Philippines, bureaucracy is about inefficiency and all those all bribery and red tape and so on and so forth. So when they view the Philippines as a failed democracy, if you will, or as a democracy that needs to be salvaged by someone who could come close to Lee Kuan Yew's model or character as a leader. And Duterte's rise is actually favored by such an attitude towards these local elections. Yeah, so my point therefore is that yes, there might be some similarities. Classes ABC here, who supported Rodrigo Duterte, are very much in favor of peace and order. Our OFWs are also in favor of peace and order, but with two different contexts. They know what security is. We don't know what security is.
Okay, all right. Well, those are two very interesting points. The social media, the effect of social media, and the OFW vote. Yes,
that's right. And then vote buying, the changes in the character of vote buying, I must say, or the things that we're finding out about vote buying.
These three factors have impacted on the elections in a positive way, or how would you assess that?
Again, very good question. It depends on how we approach positive, how we want to assess it like that. Because of the characters involved in these elections, I think that many people now were forced to articulate the justifications that they have for supporting a particular candidate. Sure, there were trolls. Sure, there were saboteurs, right? And they were all over the place. And most likely, they were the noisiest. Right?
Yeah.
Again, Rappler is a perennial victim of bashing. And I can...
We've learned you just have to stand up. You know?
I have yet to learn that.
You have to, I think that this is one of the nice things about social media. It'll force all of us to have courage.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the mob takes over. And
That's right.
actually, it's that whole idea of the dissenter. All it takes is one dissenter. It's gotten a bit better. I mean, we can talk to our social media team, but it actually has, I think. Anyway, I'm
That's
sorry
right.
I interrupted.
No, exactly. So now we man up because of that,
Yes.
right? So at one level, it's about character building. I mean, someone said that character building is nation building. But
Cool.
at another level, I think it also has to do with defining, again, the justifications that we have for supporting Maronas, for example, right? I don't think there are Dutertards in the same manner that I don't think that there are yellow tards.
Yes.
I've been accused of both. But because ultimately people make choices based on valid reasons. This is the reason I have some sympathies for Duterte. Of course, I did not vote him in the end, but I have sympathies for the man. I do not have sympathies for the kind of trolling that his supporters may have been engaged in, but I do have sympathies for the man. Why? Because I noticed that in Mindanao, Nicole Curato and I were in Mindanao 2 months ago for a series of lectures there, and we noticed the students, amazing. We asked them, so whom do you support? Oh, what, 95% of what, an auditorium of 300 students raised their hands for Duterte. Even the faculty, sociologists who were supposed to be objective, were no longer objective because they felt that at one level it was an emotional vote. Finally, someone from Mindanao is representing us in the highest levels.
That's a big point. That's how a son of the place where you come from is ascending into the presidency.
And that is a very powerful message that they're conveying, right?
Yes.
And for that reason alone, Duterte gets my appreciation, right?
Admiration.
Admiration, even. That's true.
Yes.
I speak Bisaya. I grew up. My parents are Bisaya, so I could understand him and I could resonate with him when he cried at his parents' grave.
I think everybody can feel that because everybody has been through that kind of
grieving, right?
Yes, of course.
True, but there's something with the Mindanaoan admiration for Duterte that I think Manileños do not necessarily understand. I think when Manileño supporters see Duterte, they see peace and order, someone who can restore, order in our streets. But at the same time. But I'm not sure to what extent they could actually resonate with the Mindanaoan sentiment. Bangsamoro, crime there, how the poor are in fact neglected there, the lumad, and so on and so forth. It pays to know that the poverty incidence in ARMM alone is 59%. As poverty incidence has declined over the years, because of some good policies, to be fair to this administration and the previous for that matter, it has gone down to less than 30% now, if I'm not mistaken. The point is, in ARMM, it has in fact increased because of ongoing conflicts. 59%, right? Unemployment is of course very, very high as well. So bring those two together.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt one more time. Sorry, Cheche. We have
Yes.
some new things coming in from Bongbong Marcos. Patty Pashon, Rappler's Patty Pashon is on the line. Patty, Cheche Lazarus with you and myself and Jail Cornelio.
Hello, Patty.
Hi, Patty. What's the
Hello,
news?
yes, magandang gabi po.
Magandang gabi.
Ngayon yung pinaka-latest dito sa headquarters ni Senador Bongbong Marcos, may bago kasi silang accusation. May na-receive daw silang informasyon na may bagong script or computer command na nilagay sa transparency server daw bandang alas 7:30 ng gabi noong May 9, nung election day. Yung lumalabas, sinasabi nila na itong bagong command na ito ay nag-cause ng na parang mabago yung hash code dun sa transparency server at ang suspetsya nila, ito yung dahilan kung kaya naging malawak yung difference ng boto difference ng boto ni Senador Bongbong Marcos at Congresswoman Leni Robredo.
Okay, anong sinasabi? Ano itong bagong pinasok sa mga computers? Paki-explain.
Yung parang ano siya, code siya na para ma-alter daw yung mga hash codes dun sa transparency server. Actually, hindi rin naging malinaw kung paano ba talaga ito nakaka-apekto. Sinusubukan pa namin makipag-ugnayan sa mga IT experts para mas maipaliwanag ito. Dahil ang nagpaliwanag dito sa press conference si Senador Bongbong Marcos ay bahagi lamang ng legal team niya. Kaya ang sinasabi nila, patuloy pa silang nag-iimbestiga kung ano ba talaga ang naging epekto nitong sinasabi nilang bagong computer command na nilagay noong alas 7 ng gabi sa mga transparency server noong Lunes.
So wala pa silang definite accusation kung ano ang nagawa ko na bawasan o nadagdagan yung mga boto. Wala pang ganon.
Tama yan. Wala pa silang akusasyon. Ang sinabi lang nila ay natanggap nila ang ganitong impormasyon at ito ang suspetsa nila na naging dahilan ng pagkakalayo ng boto ni Marcos at ni Robredo. Kaya naman sabi ni Attorney Francesca Wang, siya yung humarap sa media kanina, sumulat sila sa COMELEC nito lang araw para humingi ng eksplanasyon tungkol dito sa natanggap nilang impormasyon.
Ayun. Salamat, Patty. Maraming salamat sa update na yan. Tawagan mo kami ulit pag meron silang bagong ebidensya tungkol sa mga commands na sinasabi nilang pinasok sa mga computers.
Okay. Actually, hello?
Yes. Oh.
Okay. Kanina kasing umaga, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock na umaga nakaschedule yung press conference talaga dito sa headquarters ni Senador Bongbong Marcos. Pero humingi sila ng mas mahabang panahon dahil may hinahanda daw silang datos na ipapakita nila sa media. Hindi nila binigyan ng specific kung anong klaseng datos ito, pero ang hinala ay baka ito na yung mga datos na parang ebidensya nila sa sinasabing pandaraya. Bukas daw, pwede nating abangan dahil magkakaroon ulit sila ng press conference at sa wakas ay ilalabas na nila yung datos sa media.
Salamat. Maraming salamat, Patty. We just heard from Patty who was giving us an update from the camp of Senator Bongbong Marcos. Let's now go to Gemma Bagawaya Mendoza, who is our analyst here at Rappler.
Oh, she's not in yet.
Oh, she's not in yet.
Yeah, so
okay,
we're trying.
so what do you think of this new accusation that there was a computer command that has been put in? It takes an IT expert to explain what this is all about.
It does. I'm sure it gains traction. I mean, but the point is,
what is behind making an announcement like this when there is no substantive proof?
You know, this is the problem that I really have about this. Obviously, they're turning the public sphere into into a courtroom, and that is what is at stake here, Cheche. To call into question whatever results that we might have at the end of all these counting. I mean, I would be surprised if, in the end, Bongbong Marcos clinches it. Would they still make the same allegations, for example? Would they still push for the same allegations? Yeah. It might backfire in the end. But
at the same time, this is his right as a candidate to be able to raise all of these questions while they are still relevant. And because if he raises it much later, they can say, this is sour graping. Why didn't you call it when you saw it? So this is probably a valid question that he is positing at this time.
Of course.
Don't you think so?
Of course. It's just that for those who are not in support of Bongbong Marcos, this brings back memories of 1986, for example, or the snap elections, when was it those volunteers, computer volunteers at the ICC, right? They walked out and they went to the Senecal Sisters in Loyola Heights. Right? So, I've seen on my Facebook account how people are, throwing the question back at Bongbong Marcos. Is this not deja vu, Mr. Marcos, for you? Only that you are the victim this time.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it's really a battle for credibility. it raises questions about the election itself, but ultimately it also raises questions about Bongbong Marcos himself. For Leni Robredo, she seems to be, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not being biased for Leni Robredo here, but she doesn't seem to get that kind of accusation in a very credible manner.
So we're moving up into a very, critical period in terms of not being able to resolve the count for the vice presidency, but at the same time, it's raising the level of stress for everyone because Comelec is put on notice. Mr. Marcos is making accusations, and Leni Robredo is saying, let's wait for the results. Yes.
And this is what makes it really exciting, isn't it? Normally, we wouldn't care about the vice president, but now the vice presidency seems to be a more important position now.